Hello, folks. If you'll go ahead and take your seats, we're going to get started in about 3 minutes. If you are out in the hall and can hear me, please head on into the auditorium so we can get started on time. And I am looking for Jamie Shaw. Is she here? Jamie, come see me. We would invite the candidates to come down here in the front and wave your hand, Walt. Down here by Walt. Come down here in this area, and then we'll bring you up to the stage when it's your turn. Brandon, will you usher everybody in, please? Will you usher everybody in, Brandon? Thank you. Okay, and then Tim, where are you sitting? Okay, perfect, you're good. If you want to come on down, that'd be great too. Wow, you all are so quiet. If we've got everybody in here, or do we have both of our candidates in here for the first debate? Okay, we do, good. If we've got everybody in here, we'll start a minute early. That'll be great. That'll give us time for maybe an extra question. Okay, let me just mark this text unread so I don't forget to follow back up with it. Okay, welcome everyone. We are so glad you are here tonight. My name is Lisa Sandberg, and I am chair of the Washington County Republican Party, and I am excited to see so many here doing your job. I was talking to a candidate this morning from up north, and he was saying that, you know, he's doing really great things, and I said, you know, we haven't seen you down here. And he was like, well, I'm coming. And I said, you got to know, delegates in Washington County are engaged, and they are vetting. And he's like, do you really think people would show up? And I'm like, absolutely. You invite them, they'll come. So I appreciate that. I've seen you at many events in the last couple of weeks, and you guys are doing great. And it just makes me so happy to see you doing your jobs and vetting and getting to know all the candidates so that you can represent your precincts. Tonight we're going to start with an opening prayer by one of our new district vice chairs, Tim Barney, and then he is from which district? 74. Thank you. Jody's assistant. And then Jamie Shaw from District 73, Kimball's assistant, who's helping us in the back with our technology tonight, is going to lead us in the pledge. So, Tim.
Our Father, which art in heaven, we humbly come before thee this evening and thank thee for this opportunity that we have of meeting together and getting to know the candidates. And Father, we pray that thy Spirit might reside with us and upon the candidates, that each one of them might be successful in expressing their ideas, and that we might be open-minded and attentive as each one of them present their information. And bless us that we might be respectful of one another and be respectful of those around us. Bless us and guide us, Father, that we might, as a nation, come back to thee and that we might honor our forefathers in all of our actions. And we are grateful again for all that we do have, and we say these things in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
You guys are good. Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Tim, and thank you, Jamie. We have one more Jamie who's brand new too, so I'm excited to work with these people on our executive committee. All right, a couple of housekeeping things to take care of before we turn the time over to our first moderator. Everybody should know about the backyard meet and greet on Friday night at 6 o'clock. Address is in your email. Just a couple of things on that. We're going to be parking on streets, so let's be mindful of the neighbors. There is a long street, I think it's Two Weep. No, it's not Two Weep. I can't remember what it is. Lava Cove Drive, thank you. So Lava Cove Drive is a long street that doesn't have houses on it, and you can park on that street. So if you can park there and come on into the street that the hosts are on, that would be great. Also, for privacy, we're not having bathrooms. I mean, you're not using their bathrooms, so make sure you do your duty before you come. We are, lots of state, federal, and local candidates are going to be there. And we're really appreciative. Many of them, in your email you saw this, but many of them have sponsored a little food for you to come and eat and mingle. And so everybody's invited. Bring your spouse if you'd like. And we'll be excited to have a little party before the convention on Saturday. Which is over in Hurricane. You all should have received your, yes, 72 is excited to have it close to them. You all should have received your call to convention. If you have, okay, you should, it's in your email. So if you don't think you've received it, search call to convention and it should come up. It has everything you need to know, the agenda and the rules and all of that. So please read through that and make sure that you are prepared so that we can have a very efficient convention. Show up at 8:30 to credential. A lot of the candidates, like almost all of the candidates, are going to be there, state, federal, and local. So you'll want to come and visit them in their booths from that 8:30 to 10 time. April 9th is going to be our state delegate meet and greet /forum/debate. Some of them will be a forum format, some of them will be a debate format. Watch for that for more information as that comes, but that is for all state delegates to come and meet the people you'll be voting on at state convention. And then state convention is the 27th of April at the Salt Palace. So lots going on and lots of candidates reaching out and wanting you to get to know them. So keep doing what you're doing. All right, as always in the Republican Party, and this is like so amazing because people have already put money in here. We always pass around our bucket. It costs us $550 to rent this building, so we appreciate Dixie Tech and our relationship with them and that they give us a good deal, but it does cost. So we're going to send the bucket around. If you want to donate, we would be so grateful to help us pay for this event. And you can do it, you can put cash in, or you've got a Venmo, you can do Venmo on the back. And if you're old-fashioned and use checks, you can even write a check and stick that in. So whatever works for you, we would appreciate you helping us take care of this event tonight. Thank you, Lori. Let's like be a little organized. Let's go up and down, up and down, up and down, so it gets to everybody, okay? All right, now, I think I've covered everything, so let me just also, so I'm going to go over the rules, and then I'm going to introduce you to our first moderator. The rules of the debate are 2-minute opening statements, 1 minute responses with 30-second rebuttals if a candidate's name is mentioned. And then if there is a follow-up question, that'll be 30 seconds. And then 1 minute closing statements in reverse order. And they will be going in order on the ballot. We have our timers down here. Raise your hand, Mark. And Jeff, thank you. Now, Mark, will you hold up the red sign? He's going to hold these high for the candidates to see, but it's also for you to see. So if you see the red sign, we invite you to clap. That means they need to stop speaking. Okay? Now, that's the only time we're going to invite you to clap, though, because we want to get through as many questions as we can. So please hold your claps till the very end after the closing statements, and that way we can get through more questions. Many of you sent questions in, and our moderators have gone through those and have a good list of questions that they're going to try to get through, as many as they can. So at this time, I'd like to introduce you to Joann Brinton and Kristan Norton. If you'll come and take your spots, and we'll have Joann here on the left and Kristan on the right. And I'd like to introduce you to Representative Walt Brooks. Many of you know him. He is no, he's not my representative. I call him enough that you should be. Anyway, great representative. We are so glad he is one of our Washington County, represents Washington County in the Utah House and does a fantastic job. I got to sit with him in session, I don't know when it was, a couple weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, I don't know. And it was so fun to be there and watch and see how he chooses, how he's going to vote and whatnot. He really does care about Washington County, and I'm really grateful that he's here tonight to be our moderator. We'll turn the time to him. We're going to go till 7:10, and then we're going to take a 5-minute break and bring up the other candidates and the other moderator. So let's get in as many questions as we can.
Thank you, everybody. I'm really happy to be here, and I'm really excited about our two candidates. So if you would first, let's give them an applause for being here. Okay. And we have our timer down here, and again, at that red sign, please clap so we can get through a lot of these questions. I think this type of forum is fantastic because you can get right from the horse's mouth what they believe, what they feel, to help you make a good decision on nominating a candidate. So, we're going to start right off the bat with Joann on this side. To introduce yourself, you have 2 minutes, and then we'll go to Kristan.
Is this on? Can you hear? Okay, let me turn it on. There, now can you hear me? Okay, I'm now wishing I'd taken debate in high school. I've never done this before. My name is Joann Brinton, and I do want to introduce myself. I just first want to explain, it's a hard thing to run against an incumbent, and a really good lady and a good teacher in the community. I honor her for that. I've been a teacher, and it's really hard work, and it's honorable work. So I thank you for what you do in that. I was recruited to run. I was not looking to do this. I just wanted to explain that by some people who've been following the state school board more closely than I had. I was a teacher 15 years ago. I haven't taught for 15 years. And then I had a second family. I got remarried and have been raising another set of 2 boys. And so I've been a stay-at-home mom and have been volunteering in the classrooms and helping my teachers from the other end now. And I love Washington County School District. I feel like our school district down here is the greatest compared to Nebo, where I lived before and taught in charter schools up there and had my kids in some private and charter schools. And I have not felt the need to do that here. And I'm grateful. My kids went to Crimson View Elementary, and I just think that's the best elementary school in the state. No offense to Little Valley, but I loved it there. I loved the teachers that have helped me shape my kids, and I'm grateful for that. But as I said, I was recruited to do this, and as I've started watching the state school board and diving in and learning more about their role and how they set policy and the votes on the state school board, that's what made me decide to jump in and run. I feel like our conservative values need to be upheld more on the state school board. So that's why I'm doing this. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a reminder, we're going to hold our applause to the end so we can get through these, okay? Thank you.
My name is Kristan Norton, and as Joann said, I am a public school teacher. I have taught here in Washington County School District for 28 years. All 28 of those years have been in 5th grade, and I love 5th graders, and I love teaching school. And as a school teacher, I want Joann to know that those PTA moms keep us all running. So I appreciate what you have been doing, helping out in the schools, because schools really are a collaboration of communities and parents, teachers, grandparents, children, all of that together. I am a Southern Utah native. I have lived here my whole life. That's what a native means. I didn't need to say that. But, and I love these red hills. I know that many of the people here, and I am so grateful to live in St. George. My mom and I frequently talk about how grateful we are that my dad was hired at Dixie College back then as the athletic director, and that we got to come to St. George. I am grateful for the opportunity to be a Republican. I was in the ledge chair under a most favorite of legislators with Representative Brooks. I was the ledge chair for the Republican Party in his District 75. So I've been a teacher. I have been a native. I understand the values of this area and have those same values as you do, and I love children. I also know what it means to be an advocate and to fight, and I have been fighting for 4 years to make sure that our children have a great education system and that we have the blessings that we have earned the right to receive from the state and from our education community. Thank you.
And to be balanced, you should clap for her too. Okay, thanks. All right, Kristan, we're just going to go back and forth, so we'll start with you. The first question is, describe the qualifications and experience you would bring to the state school board and how they would be an asset for the work of the board.
Thank you. Well, obviously, being in a classroom every day gets you ready to understand the education system. I interact every single day with children, teachers, parents, administrators, and rules. So I have great qualifications on that. Education has its own lingo, it has its own ebbs and flows, and it is really a part of the community. Your education system is a reflection of your community, and your community is reflected in your education system. I am a fiscal conservative. I chair the finance department, and one of the great things that I do is build relationships, and I spend a lot of time with the legislature because they are our partners. They are the group that run our state, and we are one of those entities that work there, and I have those relationships. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, Joann, same question.
Okay, same question, qualifications. So I would say I have experience teaching. I don't have all the years of teaching. I taught elementary, though, for a couple of years, and then I taught middle and high school as well. And I've taught in charter and public schools. And then I'm a mom who's been raising and educating my own children, and I'm also a grandma. And the Republican principles, the Republican platform that we have, I just strongly adhere to. I feel like this is a job that if you are a strong leader and you can be a strong voice and know how to work with people and listen, that you can do this job. So I love our education system. I think education is foundational for our next generation. Do they understand their history? That's what I taught, was history. And I feel like our kids need to know where they came from and the great country that they are a part of so that they have hope and carry that into the next generation and fight for our freedoms.
Thank you. All right, Joann, we'll go back to you. So the next question is, what do you think are the 2 biggest issues or challenges facing public education in the state, and why?
Okay, should we stand up every
2
time?
biggest issues.
The 2 biggest issues facing education right now. I think that one of the biggest issues is that we're losing track of the traditional principles and values and that have made our country so strong, that we are focusing on new curriculums and ideologies that sound good and flowery, but are not leading our kids to understand who they are and where they came from. I think for a long time in our country, our education system has been based on a parent-teacher model where you just memorize and take a test and believe what I tell you rather than teaching our kids to think. So I would like to instill a return to traditional values and bringing parents in to be more engaged in the classroom, because when the family is engaged, they're the foundation of our society. Family is the building block. We need more parental buy-in and help in the classroom because it makes such a difference. So I'd like to see those two things increase.
Thank you.
That's a great question. And I think that as I think about what are the two key issues we are facing right now in our education system, one of them is something that we're all facing, and that is this major downturn in our economy right now. It was a hard year in the legislature, which means it's a hard year for education as we go forward in this next year. While we were able to receive some modest increases, thanks to good legislators, it was also a year that the federal money ended. And I don't know about your house, but I know in my house and in our school districts that the inflation has been very hard. The other thing, I agree with Joann, we need to have our communities engaged in our school and our schools engaged in our communities. For all of us, we have to realize that if we want a bright future, we have to have an educated student body and children. They are going to be the ones who are performing our surgeries and waiting on us in our grocery stores.
Thank you. All right, next question. Do you support the current funding structure of the weighted pupil unit? Joann, right, Kristan, sorry.
Yes, I do support the current funding system of the weighted pupil unit. It's not as simple as it looks, correct? It was established to have a set amount of money for every single student that goes through the schools. However, over the years, the legislature and the education administrators have seen that not all children require the same amount of money. Some require quite a bit more and others don't. Therefore, we have to go in and add onto those particular units. But I think overall it provides somewhat a form of a balance and a way to assure that every child is being represented.
Okay, this is a loaded question, and I am new to just learning and diving into the numbers. History was my background, not finance. But as I've looked, the auditor has a website online where you can go and look at the different charts. And it seems like with the weighted pupil unit, like Salt Lake spends a lot more per pupil on their kids. I think it's almost double, 15 or 16,000. And Washington County spends $8,000. I think it was somewhere in that range per pupil. But the results are different. We outperform them. So I'm not sure. It's something I'd have to research and look into a lot more. But I feel like in our education system, I think the budget increased by $2.5 billion over the last couple of years, maybe because of COVID funds. But we keep throwing more and more money, and yet the proficiency rates are going down. So that's a concern to me. I'm not sure. I'd have to research that more.
Okay, thank you. Joann, how will you implement? Oh, excuse me, I didn't give Kristan a chance to go. Oh, yeah, I did.
Yes.
Sorry about that. I'm trying to do
Should we
two
just
things at
sit for this, or should we stand
So-
up? Why don't we just sit?
Joann, we'll do this one for you.
Okay, whichever you want to do.
So, Joanna, how will you implement the values of Utah's Dixie and their parental rights and conservative values on policies made at the school board?
So Utah's Dixie. I love Utah's Dixie. I grew up in Texas, and the values, the conservative values down here feel like home to me. I love that family and faith and freedom are foremost in our values. I love seeing the engagement here, seeing the grassroots movement, the caucus process. The more I learn about it, it's such a beautiful thing that brings people together to debate and discuss ideas, and I want our children to carry that on. And now I'm forgetting exactly what the question was, how am I going to instill that on the state board? So I would like to carry that on and stand up for those. I plan to vote on principle, and in every vote, know that families come first, that our children are protected, and that they are the #1 customer of education, not curriculum, new curriculums or things coming in, but our children come first. Children and parents are the customer in education, and everything should be centered around what's best for building and strengthening the family and preparing our kids.
Let's hold our clapping, just a reminder. Thank you.
This is a very deep question for me. Growing up here in southern Utah with my dad, the leader of the Dixie Rebels, I love Dixie. And I also love the Dixie spirit. And I look through this audience and I can see many of you that know exactly what I mean when I talk about the Dixie spirit. I remember my dad going out with a whole, they knew they had a call that what used to be the Dixie Center, but it's over at the Vienna Center now, they needed landscaping, and they showed up. There was a day that the baseball field needed resodding. People just showed up. That's what we need to do now in our schools, in our communities, in our lives, is that when you see something that it needs to be done, you do it. You don't wait for the job to be offered to you. You don't wait for somebody to call you. But that's what we need to do, and that's what we need to teach our kids. If they see trash on the floor, pick it up.
Yeah. All right. So, Kristan, this is a kind of a two-part question. So, what is the role of the state school board in curriculum transparency, and what can be done to strengthen the partnership between parents and teachers?
Thank you. If you want to talk curriculum transparency, that is available to every single one in this room to go to your local school board, or even better, to go to your local school and say, I want to see your books. I want to talk to your principal. They are public schools paid for by you. That's your curriculum. That is your school. That is, we all work for you. So that's first and foremost. Now, state school board, we don't establish the curriculum. State school board establishes the standards, and then the local school boards pick curriculum that fit those particular standards so that the students can be taught the standards of the state of Utah. The other question was?
Strengthen the relationship.
Strengthen the relationship between parents and teachers, and I cannot tell you how critical that is. We need you in our schools, but we also need you. If you can't be in our schools, goodbye.
Thank you.
Okay, transparency is a big one for me, as I've just started jumping in to learn about the school board, to try to find the votes, to try to find the curriculum. It's hard to find. Get on the state school board website, look around. The minutes aren't updated for 6 months. When they are, it's a huge mess. They're not in one place. They're not searchable. And I feel like there's a lot of copyright infringements I hear from specific curriculums. I don't think we should adopt any curriculums on the school district level that have copyright that's worried about parents seeing it. It should be available online. It's hard for people to go down to the school to look at curriculum. There should be a password protected place online where parents can log in and see any curriculum that their children are being taught, so that they can vet it and make sure. We have laws in place to protect our children from things that go against their conscience. We need to have access to that curriculum and be able to see it much more readily than it's available.
Okay. Thank you. Joann?
Okay. Oh, yeah, that's right.
So,
sorry. We're going to just stand up and sit down a lot.
Because you mentioned this, because it is difficult to find votes on the state school board, how do you plan to report back to your constituents and stakeholders how you voted?
Great question. So I have been asking people and getting feedback, and I feel like, when was the last time you heard about an agenda from a state school board meeting, or the votes, or what was going on? I would like to make that more transparent. I would be willing to have a town hall monthly or quarterly and get on a Zoom meeting and report back to delegates, to parents who have concerns. I think if we're going to get more buy-in from our parents, we need to communicate with them and let them know what's going on and be very transparent about what's happening, because from America, from the beginning, there have been forces that want to tear down our freedom. And our children's education is so important that they understand where freedom comes from and why it's worth fighting for, why this country is the greatest nation on earth. And I'm afraid that too many of our kids are coming out of school thinking socialism's a better answer, and that is not okay. So I would like to be reaching out, taking input, and working to make sure that we have a solid foundation for our kids of excellence.
All right, Kristan?
Was that a follow-up? Or
I wrote that she started that question, so you
Okay.
wanted to right, how are you going to respond to your constituents on your
Okay.
votes?
Responding to my constituents is done in a number of ways. Yes, we do have a wonderful board secretary who does keep minutes up. We also have every single meeting, there is an email go out to anyone who wants to be on that email list about what happened in the meeting, the highlights, the votes, etc. And then a more in-depth one follows the following week. Our meeting's on Thursday and Friday, and sometimes they go into the wee hours of the morning, so might not be the very next day. But also, I have made a big point of keeping in close contact with the superintendents of the various districts that I serve. They are the ones that are meeting the local needs. They are the ones that you need to be able to have interpret the rules the way that see best. And so I talk at least weekly with the various superintendents and their department heads on input for bills that we will be working on and otherwise.
Well, go ahead, keep standing, because you're up for this next question. Okay. This is a two-part question as well.
Okay, thanks.
First, is there an educator shortage in the state? And if there is, what would you do to stop it?
Okay, yes, there is an educator shortage in the state. Now, if you happen to live in St. George, Utah, where everybody else in the state would like to live, not as much. However, there are many classes in our tech area and in our high school that require a more advanced degree. Those are difficult to keep current and to keep staffed. We're managing it, but sometimes it gets down to the last 2 weeks. The other thing that we have is in rural Utah, which I represent many counties within the interior of our state, and they can't get those teachers at all. One of the things that I am really working hard to do is to increase the number of classes that are available to them through online education. So there might only be one student that's ready for advanced physiology, but that one student in Garfield County can take it through an online class.
Okay. Joann?
Okay, so I do think we have a teacher shortage. I think if you look at the rates, we have a lot of teachers that aren't staying, and some of that is a good thing. It's moms getting married, like I did, and leaving the profession. But so many of our teachers are leaving because they're burned out, and they are losing the joy of teaching. I think teachers, I know I did, I got into teaching because I love history, I love our country, and I wanted to instill that in children. And I think it's the same for many teachers, why they go into this profession. But we keep adding more and more trainings, more and more surveys, more and more tests, things that detract from teaching the subjects that they love. And it is causing burnout and overload. And I just talked to a teacher today who said that she was being asked to take on extra things as a 5th grade teacher, and maybe she should just drop the social studies and do coding instead. 5th grade is the year that they have the Give Me Liberty program. We need to be teaching our kids their history and removing obstacles from teaching core sound academics in our schools.
Okay, thank you. Along with that, so if there's a shortage in the state with teachers, how does the state school board help dismiss poor teachers?
Yeah, well, I do not know the exact process, but I do believe that the state school board is the gatekeeper for rogue teachers, that it can be submitted. That's something I am brand new to learning and diving in the last couple months. This has been a big education, but I believe it's submitted to the state school board, but I would think it goes through local first, but that's something I'd have to research more. I'm not sure.
Kristan?
The way that Utah dismisses poor teachers, first of all, they can be fired at their local district. So that is the first place that it can go. But for those teachers who have committed violations, and sometimes their district knows about them and sometimes they don't, but if a police report is filed, et cetera, there is a group of attorneys, employment attorneys, that do the investigation, and then they have a variety of different options that they can suggest to the state board. It does come to state board. We meet on those. We go through the files very closely. We have the option of accepting what they suggested, or we have an option of not accepting it. We can require the license to be pulled. We can require the license to be flagged, depending on what that particular action was. I will tell you numerous times, it all gets down to, look, this was a child in that class, done. This was a child. This was one of our students, done.
Can I rebut that?
But
I just
30 seconds.
I feel like the amount of rogue activist teachers is pretty small, especially in Washington County. But I have heard instances of teachers that get moved around from place to place to place, and just they can't fire them, that it's a hard process to get rid of them. And so I have concerns about that, and think that there should be a more transparent way for parents to stand up and advocate when they see problems. I mean, we just had a liberal teacher up north that was arrested for things. It's kind of a scary thing, but again, I think most teachers, that's not them.
Kristan, do you want to add anything to that?
Okay.
Okay. All right, our next question will start with you, Kristan. And just as for the audience, you've heard about the sensitivity materials bill, how we get books that shouldn't be in schools based on some people's opinion. I'm going to leave this a little more open for our candidates. So I want to hear your stance on the objective test about sensitive materials in schools.
I believe that we should not have any form of porn in any of our schools, period. Exclamation point. I also want you to know that Washington County School District was a leader in this area. The superintendent at that time said, I saw what was in book number 1 and said that book will not be in our school. He did not wait. He got sued. The ACLU came in on him. The Attorney General came to the rescue. But when the second go around with the legislature on sensitive materials, when they went with the bright line, they called in Washington County School District administrators to explain how they had done it, and that was the bill that they passed. We have a very hard line here in this area about what we will and will not hold up for. Those are my values. Those are many of your values, and I think that's the way that it needs to be forever.
I'm glad to hear you say that. I wholehearte's agree, and I appreciate that Washington County School District did try to lead out more on this. This is a really serious issue. There's no room in our public libraries for sensitive materials, but I do not believe that the state board in general, that the vote was to remove those. I believe the state board followed what the unions wanted, what the Library Association wanted. They were talking about it being book banning to remove them, and then there were lots of local districts that were saying, oh, we're going to pull out the Bible, or we're going to pull out Uncle Tom's Cabin, or books that are classic good literature as a bait and switch. Look over here, rather than focusing on the actual books that need to be removed. They are still in some libraries in our state. So you can go on, look at Laverna and the library, see which books are in your child's libraries or your grandkids, but there is no place for sexually explicit pornographic material in our libraries. It is not part of education. And the state school board did not lead out on that enough. It was local districts.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Can I follow up with that?
Yes, you may.
Thanks. I would disagree with that. The state school board has a job to do, and that is that we take legislation and then we codify that into rules for the districts. That's exactly what we did. We got our marching orders from the legislature, what they wanted us to do, how they wanted it worded, and that's exactly what happened.
You have 15 seconds if you'd like to rebut. Go ahead.
Okay, I just want to rebut and say every time the legislature is working on bills, it's a rebuttal and saying that the state school board's not doing their job. They do have the authority to act on their own, and Ken Ivory ran a bill to remove these materials and make it easier for the school boards to get them out. If you didn't watch those committee hearings for HB 29, please go watch them. It didn't pass. And the legislature's responding to parents saying they're still in our libraries. The school board's not removing them. Please help us. So I would say that's a vote of no confidence when the legislature does that.
Okay. All right, thank you. This last one, we'll start with you, Joann, is do you support the mandatory DEI training for school districts that the state school board recently voted to keep in policy? And what would you do proactively to change it?
I do not. So for those of you that don't know, that stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I think teachers need to be focusing on academics, classroom management, time management, how to help our kids. They do not need to sit through new trainings, especially when only one way is presented. So diversity, equity, inclusion seeks to break people up into groups. It is Marxist in theory. If you go on and research it, look it up. Look up diversity, look up equity, look up inclusion. It sounds good, but it is not. It is dividing, and it is, why are teachers being forced into extra trainings? That's why we have teachers leaving. It is killing the joy of teaching, and I think it's very destructive, and it's anti-American. And the word equity is a real hot spot for me. It means equal outcomes. We are trying to force equal outcomes in our school instead of equal opportunity. America was founded on equal opportunity, equal access to anything you want to achieve.
Appreciate it. Just so we can get this through, if you guys hold it till the end, we'll give you plenty of time to clap, I promise. So thank you. Oh, was it red?
It was the red clap.
Even better. Clap more. Okay, thanks. Sorry about that. All right, Kristan.
Okay, I'm going to try to do this in 1 minute, so I'm going to talk really, really fast. The State Board of Education did not pass a DEI rule. The State Board of Education passed a rule 3 years ago that allowed all children to feel freedom and happiness and joy in their schools. Then, 2 years ago, Representative Jimenez passed a new bill, and part of that new bill is he wanted his language that said that we were not going to have CRT-type ideologies in our school. That's what we had already said in the bill that we had, but because we wanted to double check that or strengthen it even more so, we took his exact language and put it in our bill, and that's the bill we passed. Then 261, House Bill 261 this year came through, and we knew that we needed to add again to that rule. So HB 261 came through, and we added that into the bill too. It is the exact language used in the legislation. The only thing different about that bill and the other bill is that it does have training for our teachers, because our teachers were afraid to teach about slavery. Our teachers, the end.
I won't tell you to stop, I promise. Okay. All right, this is our last question, so we can get on to the next group. We'll start with you, Kristan, is name 3 key things that you would like to accomplish as a member of the school board.
Oh, thank you very much. Number 1, I would like to make sure that all of our children feel safe in our schools. I am so grateful that we have had some excellent legislation. Last year, the school board prioritized part of their budget, $100 million for Safe School, and this year, Representative Wilcox and Senator Ipson have taken on a whole new idea of what school safety should look like, and it is transformational, and it makes me feel safer as a teacher, and I'm so grateful for that. The other thing that I would really feel like is a key issue is that we are working with our students to improve their learning abilities, their education, and we're looking at national research to do the best things that we can. And finally, I would hope that we will be able to come to a working relationship with legislatures, with cities, with parents, with students. All of the groups come together and make our education system fabulous.
Thank you. Joann, last question, your 3 key things.
3 key things. So I want to get the focus back to academics and academic excellence. I would like to move away from equity in education and focus again on equal opportunities and what's made America great. I want to have conservative principles, following the Republican platform, seeing that our families are protected first, that we remember that children are number 1 in all that we're doing. And I want to see Martin Luther King's dream of equal not being colorblind, seeing children all as the same. Everybody should be treated the same. Content of character, focus on character. When the founding fathers created education and they talked about it, they said the importance was having faith and teaching about the need for family and for patriotism. Like, are these things coming through in our schools? Not one faith, not one religion. We have protections against that in our Constitution. It's not supposed to be sectarian, meaning focusing on one religion. But the basic characteristics of morality should be taught in our schools, and we have it in our civics education. We have a great Utah Constitution.
Okay. Well, I think we were able to get through a lot of questions. I hope this really helped you to identify our great candidates that we have, where they're going to line up, and if you would, let's give them one final applause. Thank you. Once you come back, we're going to give you, I have it written down. I kind of left the 3 key things, but we're going to wrap this up with them and have them have their final closing statement. 1 minute. Joann, go ahead.
Okay, final closing statement. I love this country. I love my children, and I love the children of Utah. I loved my experiences teaching, and I love the stories of our nation. I want our children to have the same country and the same opportunities that we've had. I love Ronald Reagan's quote that we're only ever one generation away from losing our freedom. We must instill these principles and these values in our children. So I would like to see an adherence to that and focus on the good, sound, moral values that are already in the Republican platform. I think it's a good thing that it's a bipartisan thing so we can track the votes. I would urge you to go on and look at the UEA website, the Teachers Union, and the NEA. They focus on social justice. If you go to the bottom, I don't want our kids to turn out to be social justice warriors. I want them to learn about American excellence and be patriotic and love their country and have hope in the future.
I'm going to take this a little bit of a different route. I'm going to talk about something very specific and something that I have done that I think is making a change in our youth right here in St. George. About 24 years ago, I had a student in my class that was autistic, and his autistic aide had found in the school where she had been before this program called Give Me Liberty. And she brought it to me as one of my aides and to help with this little autistic boy, and he just took to it. Well, 24 years later now, we are still doing Give Me Liberty in the schools that I have taught, and I've spread it around this entire county. Our students that are in 5th grade are learning they're memorizing the preamble to the Constitution. They are memorizing the Gettysburg Address. They are memorizing the presidents. They can name every state on a map, and they can list the capital as well. And there are 12 other things that they are doing. We don't get money from any federal or state grant. We do this because we love America.
Thank you. All right, again, one more thanks for our great candidates today. Thank you.
All right, that was awesome. Thank you, candidates, and thank you, Representative Brooks. That was great. Thank you. Okay, let's have our candidates come forward for Senate District 29. We will have Chad Bennion on the left, Cory Green in the middle, and Don Ipson on the right. Okay.
This one's live?
Yes. Okay. Yep, let me just. Okay, as the candidates are coming up, I just wanted to let you know, I had a couple of people, we've had more than a couple, quite a few delegates and others who didn't attend our training that we had on the 7th of March. Some weren't told about it, some just couldn't come. But they wanted, because that training attendance is recorded on our website, and they wanted their precincts to know that they got trained. So some of them did the training on their own. They watched the video on their own. So if any of you are interested in that, if you watch the training, just let Brandon know, and he'll mark you present as having taken the training. Also, some of you are wondering why you don't have access to your voter rolls so that you can talk to your precinct members. That would be because you didn't sign the data protection policy. If you, which looks like this. Now, if you, on the email that came through from the post, I think it said post-caucus training. I'm not sure. If you search post-caucus training, I think it might come up. There are links to this document on there that you can sign and return to us so that we can give you access to your data. All right, next up, we're going to learn about our Senate 29 candidates, and we're excited to have Jordan Hess as our moderator. Jordan moderated for us a couple of times ago and did a great job, so I'm excited to have him back. He was our state party vice chair and ran for CD2, gave that a really good run, and he is now working for the city of Washington and doing a great job for them. So we are excited for him to be here to moderate. Same rules apply as before. You guys did a great job with your clapping. Thank you. And we'll turn the time to Jordan and see you in a few.
Okay, candidates, you're going to have a 2-minute opening statement, and then we will start in on questions. You'll get a 60-second response. If one of your names is mentioned, you'll get a rebuttal, 30 seconds, and then we'll end with 1-minute closing statements. But I believe we're going to start in the order that you're sitting. So, Chad, you are up first for your opening statement.
Hi, I'm Chad Bennion, and I want to thank all of you for being here tonight and for your service. Today, I sent out a letter in response to the slurs and derogatory things that are being said from the incumbent and his surrogates. And I hope you'll take the time later to read through it, because it tells you everything you need to know about my character and integrity. It's unfortunate that things have gotten this way in politics these days. I guess we shouldn't be surprised, because when you look at what's happened to President Trump. But I'm looking forward tonight to debating issues. I'm running a campaign that is hard on issues, soft on people, as opposed to what's happening to me, hard on people, soft on issues. And I look forward to it tonight. Thank you for being here.
My name is Cory Green. I am thankful that all of you showed up here today. It's nice to see that we have diligent people that are here to carry out their duties as delegates and as concerned citizens and voters. I'm thankful for the opportunity to be running for State Senate District 29. I am here because I really want to focus on the issues that concern our district. I will tell everybody up front that if I'm elected, I will not vote for a bill that I cannot reconcile with the Utah State Constitution or the U.S. Constitution. I won't do it. If somebody wants to sponsor a bill that provides illegal aliens benefits, I'll say, over my dead body. Hell no. If we have a governor that wants to give in to cancel culture, who belongs to my own party, I'll stand up on my own 2 feet if the other Republican senators don't and say, hell no. Ain't gonna happen. My district doesn't want it. I'm not gonna vote for it. I'm a prior business owner. I've owned 3 different companies. I understand negotiation. I understand leadership. I understand how Donald Trump operates. I was like that as a CEO, not quite as feisty, but I understand how to get things done and how to negotiate. When I say negotiate, I don't mean negotiate my core values or the Constitution. It's not negotiable. I want to get things done for this district. I want to make things better, less political, and I hope that I can have your guys' support. Thank you.
Good evening. I'd like to thank all of you for being here. This is an incredible thing to see you people here. You know, I was once in a Republican event. Then Attorney General Craig Bell, or Lieutenant Governor, excuse me, Craig Bell introduced me, and he said, one thing about Ipson, he's not a politician. What you see is what you get. You know, I've worked hard for District 29. I've run a small business. I know what it's like. I've made a payroll. I know what it's like I started with one truck, and we wound up with 400 or 500 trucks at one point. And we worked in 11 western states, and I know what it's like to wake up and face the people you work with, that you have to make right decisions. I'm honored to have served in District 29. I've served 2 terms in the Utah State Senate. I'm a member of the leadership team. I'm the vice chair of executive appropriations. There's 4 of us that work on this and help put together the state budget. And I'm honored and I would like to have the opportunity to go back for 1 more term and serve you. I'm also honored that I received the endorsement of Mike Lee. I've received the endorsement of my House colleagues, Neil Walder, Colin Jack, and Walter Brooks. And I'm honored to work with these guys in the legislature, and I can tell you you're well served by them. The Sunshine Caucus rocks, and we are able to get the things done you need done.
Thank you. Each of these questions are based upon one of the tenets of the Utah Republican Party platform. Our first question deals with taxation, and we'll start with you, Cory. We recognize that the power to tax is also the power to control, and believe that the best way to control government is to strictly control the amount of taxes imposed on the people. There are now 9 states across the country without an income tax. The governor mentioned recently the idea of joining that list of 9 and eliminating income tax altogether in the state of Utah. As a Utah state senator, would you support legislation to eliminate state income tax? Why or why not? If it was eliminated, where would that tax be diverted to?
It's a great question. I'm for eliminating the tax, the income tax. There are other states that do great without an income tax, especially when we have a middle class here in St. George and across the state of Utah, and a lower class that are struggling because of Joe Biden's additional taxations, AKA inflation. And a lot of people in this district that I've talked to are struggling. I talked to a lot of youth that are struggling. They don't think they can stay here for very much longer because they can't afford to live here. So I'd definitely get rid of that tax, and I'd look at other options to replace it with. I really like Kara Berkland's lotto bill. I don't play the lottery as a member of the church, but I think eliminating property tax would be nice, and looking at having a forward-looking vision to see what we can do to eliminate the income tax. And I don't like the sales tax. I don't like the food tax either. So.
Well, Cox, if nothing else, he stirred us up and he got us thinking, hadn't he? So income tax is a taxation on productivity, and I'm opposed to, when you tax productivity, you get less of it. And I think it's important that we take a look at that. But you got to replace that tax with something. You got constitutional things. You got law enforcement, you got police that need to be supported. You've got to build highways. Where's that money going to come from? Now, in Utah, the income tax is primarily used for education. So how are you going to replace that? You're going to have to raise the tax on some other venue in order to do that. So I'm open for suggestions. What is it?
I bet if I took an informal poll right now and asked who likes taxes, not many hands would come up. You know, we do have certain needs that we have to fund in this state. Constitutionally, we've got public safety, education, general health and welfare. A lot of the times, if you look at some of the funding bills and the things that happen, things go outside of those priorities. And so part of it's focusing on where we're putting the taxes. Now, I think you should set tax policy right the first time rather than keep doing reduction after reduction year after year, because what that means is that the legislature's not getting it right the first time and taking too much of our money as it is. So if I were looking at it, I wouldn't just be looking at the income tax. I'd be looking at evaluating the entire tax structure and going through it to balance what our actual needs are, not our wants, but balancing it so that we have the best tax structure that can weather any storm, regardless of whatever happens in the economy.
Thank you, candidates. This next question deals with education. Our party platform says that parents have the primary right and responsibility to educate their children, and we support their right to choose public, private, or home education. In recent years, the Utah legislature passed Representative Candace Perucci's school choice scholarship program called Utah Fits All. It currently utilizes a very small percentage of the state's overall education budget. The program also prioritizes low-income students. Would you support expanding this program, both in terms of funding and eligibility, Senator?
Yes, I would. In fact, we expanded it some this year and added some money into that program, and I voted for it. I think that the scholarship program gives parents a choice, and I think it's a good deal. I don't think it hampers public education at all, and I think that we need to work to give parents a choice.
I support this program, its expansion, and also giving parents the decisions when it comes to education. We have too many things that are creeping into our schools with woke ideology, CRT. We need to make certain that education is focusing on reading, writing, and arithmetic, the things that really matter, not what other extracurricular things are going on, what ideology. We just don't need that. Our kids need to be able to be employed in the future. They need to go to school, learn a trade. Those things are the most important. And if we don't tighten up our education system, whether it's public, private, it's only bodes worse for the future.
I just realized something sitting up here. I'm the youngest candidate, and I got the least amount of hair. I'm not as good looking as the senator, but I'll try to do my best. I believe the Department of Education at the federal level should be disbanded. I don't think they have any business here in the state of Utah telling us how to teach our kids. It's ridiculous. Parents, like he said on the platform, we're capable of teaching our kids. We're capable of supervising our kids. We're capable of teaching our kids what's right, what's wrong. We're capable of teaching our kids that there are two genders. We're capable of teaching our kids the right way. So, yes, I'd support it.
Great. Here's a follow-up question. How do you address the criticisms that this legislation could hurt public schools, especially in rural parts of our state?
You know, as I was talking on the former question, there's a balance with things. The way that you would make certain things happen responsibly is having minimum standards, not onerous standards, but when the monies are distributed and how they're utilized, you make certain that they're going to the purposes that they're designated. Accountability and responsibility go hand in hand with giving the freedom and ability to have that educational choice.
Can you repeat the question?
Yes. How would you address some criticisms that these school choice programs can hurt public schools, especially in rural parts of the state?
I would probably speak with my colleagues and talk with people in my district that live in less urban areas and find out a way to overcome that. Because I would still support it. It doesn't matter if it's urban, less urban, whatever. I still support parental rights to choose where their kids go to school or don't go to school. Maybe we need to look at...
Time is up. 30-second on the follow-ups.
So to follow up to this, the scholarship program has rules and regulations that they have to follow. And hopefully, doesn't matter whether it's rural or urban, if the student and the parent has a program that's viable, it shouldn't make any difference. The rural schools have the same things they teach in public schools as the others do. And so what they do is, it shouldn't matter.
Okay, thank you. Cory, you're up first on this one. Our party platform talks about the reaffirmation of states' rights. Utah often does a good job pushing back against federal mandates. However, it seems that legislation often comes forward at the state level that undermines county and municipal control. Can you provide one example where the state should respect the rights of local government?
It's a good question. I believe that the people that know best how to govern themselves starts at the grassroots level and works up. So if you're talking to your cities and your counties and your state representatives are all coordinating together, then that should solve a lot of that problem, I think, when it comes to looking at that issue. So just being communicating between the different areas to overcome any constitutional or state constitutional issues.
Thank you. Senator.
So you just want one?
One to start with.
Okay, I think planning and zoning is anything that has to do with our municipalities. Better government is better served with the people. And planning and zoning is one of the biggest.
As a former planning and zoning commissioner, I couldn't agree more. Those types of decisions need to be made locally and best. We can influence general guidance on things, but the state is limited in what it can do, and it should be. The cities, the counties, you got to remember something though. Things are a little bit different than what they are with the federal government and states' relationships. The 10th Amendment gives all rights to who? The states or the people. That's where they reside. But all of these other cities, towns, special districts, school boards are all political subdivisions of the state. And so if there is a problem or something isn't being administered correctly, the state does have an oversight responsibility, but the decision-making should all remain right there at the local level. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Ipson, you will lead off on this one. Staying on the topic of reaffirmation of states' rights, due to federal roadblocks, we are finding it difficult to move quickly on building additional reservoirs like the one in Warner Valley and building new thoroughfares like the Northern Corridor. How will you work with our federal delegation to get the Bureau of Land Management and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to cooperate with Washington County and greenlight these very vital projects?
I think that's a great question. You know, I have a great relationship with all of our federal delegation, and I think that I will be able to, you know, I've worked with them well in the past, and I think I can work with them in the future. We have got to push back on the federal government and take back our right. The Northern Corridor, you know, we've had that ready to go, and they keep putting more environmental restrictions on it. I can tell you that it's absolutely imperative that we work with our federal partners and get this thing. We got to push back on the federal government, and they push back on us.
You know, it makes a big difference who the president is. And if we have a Republican president come this fall and a different administration, it will make a lot of these issues a lot better, because it does matter who is in what position. Representation does matter. I've spent time working with many different elected officials, county officials, city officials in the past. I would expect to use those same skills from my previous job experience and building those types of relationships to see that we get the job done for the citizens of Washington County.
Well, that summed it up pretty good. I'd work with federal partners as well. That's really important. I think it's important that this state exercises their 10th Amendment rights against government overreach, even if that requires going to court over it. I'm tired of these environmentalists that interfere with road building and other things we have here in this country. They can build a road really quick in China, get it done real quick over there. We need to start really pushing back on states' rights and making sure our federal delegation is doing their part too.
A follow-up question, we'll start with you, Chad. What do we do if these federal agencies fail to cooperate?
That's great, Jordan. I appreciate that. I think we should use the Texas model with what Governor Abbott's doing. If the federal government isn't doing their job or they're interfering with our state's rights, we should assert ourselves. We should make certain that they are having to come and push back against us instead of the other way, because we have tried for years here in the state of Utah with different ombudsmen and everything else, constitutional defense funds. Well, I think we should be more proactive and just start taking action then in order to push back.
Like I said before, exercise the 10th Amendment, exercise our state rights, and push back. And again, like Chad mentioned earlier, it matters who the president is. I'm hoping Donald Trump gets reelected in January, so we don't have to hassle with a lot of this nonsense and pushback that we're getting now, because we're a conservative state who the federal government owns way, way, way too much land in. So, yeah.
So during the legislature, we worked on some legislation that dealt with the 10th Amendment, and we're pushing back. We're already ahead of that and trying to get started. I think it's important that we hold our ground and we exercise our 10th Amendment rights. And we just simply can't continue to be pushed back by the federal government.
Thank you. Cory, you're up first on this one. We have a plank in our platform that deals with economic development. Do you believe it is the government's role to use tax dollars to fund projects like baseball stadiums and hockey arenas? If so, where do we draw the line on how our tax dollars should be spent?
I don't support subsidizing taxes for building sports arenas. In fact, I tweeted Governor Cox and I asked him, I said, I'm thinking about starting up my own company. You know, I'd really like a big loan, you know, to help me get an office space and some vehicles and some other stuff. You know, when can that happen? He hasn't replied back yet. So I'm against that, and I think that you got to vote for good people like me that push back on overtaxation, especially in our state with a surplus. I mean, come on. That surplus belongs to we the people. It's not for the government to sit there and choose what and how to spend it on. So I'm just voting for the right people, getting them into the state legislature, and that's what I would do.
So take, for example, the baseball arena. We putzed around with that a lot during the session and different funding mechanisms, and we finally wound up with a mechanism that sales tax would fund the ballpark and the Fair Park area. It's really downtrodden in Salt Lake, and it will really help. And if we build that up, the tide lifts all boats. If we can get that in the economy to working better there, and the taxation is a sales tax that's generated within that district. So the thing is self-funding, and you know, the Miller family has agreed to pay $1 billion towards that arena that becomes the property of the state, and then they lease it back. That's pretty good. That makes sense, right? You pay $1 billion, and then you go lease it back.
Well, I guess that's one difference between I and the incumbent. I don't believe in corporate welfare. I don't think anywhere in our state constitution it actually talks about having stadiums funded by any political subdivision. And I can appreciate that the legislature didn't want to raise the tax themselves, but they put it on the local taxing authority. But it's still a tax. It's still a tax. It's going to be going to corporate welfare. Now, this is one of the problems that happens in government, and again, why we end up with budget issues, because we go outside of what our constitutionally mandated functions and duties are. And I hope to see less of it in the future, and you will with me.
The incumbent was mentioned. Would you like a rebuttal?
Yeah, I would. So I don't know that we have budget problems, because I think we balance our budget every year. And the taxation is within the project itself. Will pay the money back with the revenue that it generates within the system, and I think that's fair.
Thank you. This next question, we'll start with Senator Ipson. The proper role of government. The state legislature works hard to balance our state budget, for which we are very grateful. The state budget now sits at almost $30 billion, up from $14 billion just 10 years ago. Are there areas in which the state is spending money where it shouldn't, or does the state need $30 billion to fulfill the needs of our population?
Well, that's a good question. What services would you like to cut? Okay, name them. What are your roads? You want to go without them? Yeah. Well, it's a $29 billion budget. We put money in reserves every year. We put money aside. We've got well over $1 billion in reserves. And yeah, would I like to cut it? Yeah. But I have people coming to me that want projects. St. George City is one of them. We just funded a $15 million tower for St. George Airport so that we could get the FAA direction of our airplanes into that. You want to cut that? Yeah, well, safety tells me you don't.
You know, when I previously served in the legislature, the budget was a lot smaller. It was only about $7.3 billion 20 years ago. We've seen a lot happen. Now, I remember when Greg Brinton from the Tribune came to me, because my desk was right next to where the press was on the floor, and asked me if I'd seen the Senate Supplemental Appropriations Act, and I said no. Well, the first item on it was deer crossings, Washington County, and I could get that for making the highway safe. We don't want deer on I-15. Second item, though, was a golf course for a municipality. Third item was a dinosaur park for Ogden City. And I said, oh, Craig, I've got it. It's nothing more than a little Jurassic pork. There are too many places in our budget that go outside like that, and there's no endless supply of demands. And the years we have a surplus, there's 100 times what there would be with the surplus. But we need to be spending those funds wiser and saving more, because rainy days are going to come.
Here's a follow-up question. Or did you get to answer, Cory? Okay, go ahead, sorry.
Jordan's always way ahead of me. So anyway, our state government, in my belief, is too big. Our budget, like Chad said, has gone through the roof over the last few decades, and I'd like to see some things cut. Do we really need incident management trucks rolling up and down the freeway when we have the highway patrol and tow agencies and a towing company? That could be cut. Do we really need the administrative state bullying businesses, which the Constitution did not intend to have happen? Let's start cutting some regulations on small businesses. Let's start shrinking the size of occupational and professional licensing. For once, nobody stands up to them. Nobody. I've called our reps down here. I've called reps everywhere. Nobody does, and I will. I'll stand up to them because the Constitution demands it.
Here's a follow-up question. Much of our state spending actually derives from federal mandates and programs like Medicaid, SNAP, education, etc. What is one federal program that you would like to push back on as a Utah State Senator? I think, Cory, you're up first.
What federal program do we want to push back on? Boy, I don't know where to start. The Department of Environmentalism, the Department of Education. I'd like to push back on as many as we can because, frankly, the federal government's way too big and is out of control and needs to be cut. So I think that's what needs to happen.
Okay.
For one, I'd like to see us push back against the education department. I think they interfere too much in our schools. That's where I'd start.
You know, I take a look at what's happening to our ranchers in this state with the BLM and the control that's trying to be exerted. Those are areas that I'd cut. I'd cut there. I can agree with the others that were mentioned also, but I think there's just way too much intrusion into our state from the federal government, and we need people who are going to push back much harder, particularly from such a Republican district as Senate District 29 is.
Chad, you can stay standing because you're next up on this one. If you happen to end up a state senator next year, what are your top 3 legislative priorities in the next general legislative session to make life better for residents of Washington County?
Well, I think the first thing that I would do, because representation matters, I would listen to you. I would find out what you believe the biggest things are, because I think it varies from our community to community here in Washington County. I'm thinking for a minute because of these things, but I think that top 3 priorities, I'm not going with a legislative agenda. I'm going there to represent you. And so I'm going to leave it up to you guys. You tell me, and I'll fight, and we'll get it done.
I agree with what Chad said. I'm a huge advocate of holding town halls if I get elected. That's one thing I really respected about Mike Lee after he got elected at the federal level. He would get out and talk to people when it was an off election year or when it was on election year, and that's the way to do it. I don't care if it's during the legislative session. I would come out on a Saturday when I'm off, drive all the way from Salt Lake, I'd email everybody in the district and say, hey, this is what's being proposed up on the Hill, and I need feedback on it. Let's meet up at the park. Let's have pizza and hang out at the park. I got celiacs now, so I can't have pizza. Kind of sucks. But I need to get feedback from constituents, and you guys, that's how government works. You don't just sit up at Salt Lake and write legislation without talking to constituents. So,
I'd like to continue to listen to what the people are concerned about, but I can tell you, here's a project that we listed the Senate priorities. And among those are water, education, affordable housing, energy. Energy's a big one. The federal government's overreach on our power plants is killing us. We've got to fight back on that. We got the cheapest energy in the nation, and we got to do everything we can to keep that. And it's just simply, homelessness is a big issue. And I got to commend Washington County, particularly the city of St. George, for the incredible job they've done with Switchpoint to keep homelessness off our streets in St. George. I thank you to the people of St. George.
Thank you. We support lawful efforts of local law enforcement agencies to protect citizens in their homes and in their communities. What have you done to support law enforcement in the past, and what would you do as our senator to show support for law enforcement moving forward?
So, probably not a bigger supporter of law enforcement on the planet than I am. I've increased salaries. I've set up a scholarship program for first-time home buyers, or a down payment program for first-time home buyers. In law enforcement, I've run legislation to run education support for them, and we have got to support the law enforcement people that protect our streets and our cities and our highways. It's one of our largest single priorities, and I'm grateful for that, of the scholarship program that we set up for them. And we're blessed with the greatest law enforcement people in the world, right here in Utah, right here in Washington County.
I wholeheartedly endorse and support our law enforcement officials. I actually, for the past 6 years, have had the honor of representing the correctional officers and adult parole and probation agents with the Utah Department of Corrections. And one of the biggest problems has been funding. And we've gone through these cycles of defund the police. Well, we still have officers at the state prison who are working up to 142 hours every 2 weeks. They're still doing mandatory overtime, yet public safety is a constitutional priority. Yet we can't get enough people to work at a prison, and we're talking the people they work with are felons. These aren't people you just meet on the street like we get to do every day. We need to do a better job in this state, particularly the governor.
Now, continuing on what Chad just said, $15 million were spent or thereabouts to build some transient center in Draper. Why couldn't that have been some sign-on bonuses for people that want jobs as correctional officers? Listen, this topic is really important to me. My dad was a police officer. I grew up every day as a kid wondering if my father would come home every night. I'd get scared when he'd have to leave the house in the middle of a mill and respond to a call, lights and siren, code 3. I've got a criminal justice degree. I've got a legal studies degree. I was a police officer in the Navy. I want to sponsor legislation that's going to protect cops. I think it ought to be an automatic death penalty case without the possibility of life in prison if a police officer is murdered. And I'd sponsor the bill to do it. I don't care if they're a legal citizen that kills a cop or an illegal alien that kills a cop. We need to do better to protect the police. And the move over law is not working. We still have highway patrol cars getting hit. That needs to be looked at too.
This is our final question before our closing statements. From the preamble of our party, the Republican Party is a party by the people and for the people. We appreciate the productivity of our citizens, affirm the infinite worth of all individuals, and seek the best possible quality of life for everyone. We invite all citizens to join us in working together for a better Utah. Now, I appreciate your service as delegates. I'm sad to see that not many in my generation and younger are in this room. Tell us what you have personally done in the past year to bring new people into the party, appeal to the next generation of voters, and help minority populations see that they have a home in the Republican Party? Cory.
I agree with what Jordan just said. We need more participation from youth, and it's something that the party really needs to work on more, especially in smaller towns that we kind of live in down here. I've done a lot to try to encourage youth to join the military that are in high school. I've done a lot to try to get them interested in politics, especially with my own kids, because decisions we make now are going to affect their generation. This budget is out of control at the federal level. It's going to negatively impact my kids and my grandkids possibly if we don't get on it quick. And I've talked to kids at schools. I've talked to kids at church. I've done all I can to spread the word. Even in my precinct, as a precinct chair, when I talk to youth, I try to encourage them to be proactive in politics and learn about the Constitution in our country.
You know, I've had the opportunity at the legislature as the different youth groups from the different cities have come in, and I've sponsored lunches, dinners with them. I've gone with them. And there's one group that comes that they're really passionate about fighting different addictions, like drug addictions. And it's really cool. I mean, they come with really good questions, and they're really focused, you know, and it's called the Washington County Youth Coalition, I think is what it's called. And wow, those guys, they have it together. And I think that as we deal with them and help coach them as they're there and they see how the system works, and they come and they verbalize with us, and they're neat. And most of the cities in Washington County send a group in to visit with us.
You know, we have a lot of great people in this county, and they work in many different ways. But one of the funnest ways I had to work on something this year was with the caucus boot camp, which the Republican and the Democrat parties both worked on to help the youth learn more about our political system. I think there needs to be more done to help them to understand the caucus process. And as your state senator, I would be willing to run additional legislation on civics and about our caucus system to help our youth understand better, make certain it's taught in the schools, because they are the future, and they need to be able to engage in this political system and understand it. And so I think that's one of the best things that we could do for our kids, and I appreciate all the people in this county who worked on that and made it such a success this year, and hope to see it grow more in the future.
Thank you. Thank you, candidates. You will now be given 1 minute for a closing statement, and we will start with you, Senator Ipson.
Thank you. You know, again, I'm honored to be here with you tonight. I'm honored that you're here and you've taken the time to be here. I look forward to meeting with you on Saturday. I've served 2 terms in the state Senate. I've gained popularity with seniority. I have the leadership. I'm part of the leadership team. I'm on the budget committee, and I'm prepared to serve you another 4 years and would like that opportunity. Thank you.
Got out of order there for a second. Well, I want to thank you all for being here. I would appreciate your vote this Saturday at the convention. If you have any questions, please go to my website, votebennion.com. And I'm just going to close with and paraphrase something that Senator Hatch said when he was running against Frank Moss for Senate, but I'm going to change a little bit for here. What do you do when you're running against an incumbent who's a senator on an appropriations committee but isn't representing your views? You send him home. And I appreciate your support. Thank you.
I'm thankful to be here tonight. I'd really appreciate delegates' support at convention. I'm not a career politician. I've never held office before. We have several good candidates that have done great in government that have had that same background of not being a career politician. Mike Lee is one of them. He never held political office. Donald Trump was one of them. So I ask that you guys give me the same chance that we've given them and send me up to the state senate to represent this district. If you want the same business as usual, don't vote for me, vote for Don Ipson. If you want, another individual that's had prior political experience who tells really good Alec Baldwin jokes, vote for Chad. But in all seriousness, I'd hope that you guys would please vote for me. I promise that I'd be a good representative for this district. And again, I'm thankful for your diligence in being here. Thank you.
Thank you, Jordan. Just want to remind you, those questions did come from delegates, and I appreciate all of you who submitted questions. I know that there wasn't a time for all of them, but they were good, and I think we got a good insight into each of our candidates. As you're walking out the door, I want to just thank you, and especially thank Sean Guzman, who put us over the top of $1,000, a little over $1,000 today. So we appreciate you helping us pay for this meeting, and you guys are great. We'll see you on Friday. We'll see you on Saturday. It's going to be a wonderful week. Thank you.